Hi everyone, welcome to the second edition of the CertiK Security Leaderboard Showcase. I'm your host, Aaron Leibowitz. As you all saw last week, the format for the show is that we're going to go through the Security Leaderboard, show our guests page, and then bring on our guests for this week. Today we're going to have Dewdney from Kylin Network. So let's start by jumping into the video. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Here you can see the landing page at CertiK.org, where we have auditing, Skynet, and our CertiK Shield solution. Scrolling down, you see all the projects we've worked with, many pages of them. And here's the Kylin Network page. You can click into their audit history, see the full audit report, the Skynet console with the 6 security primitives. Then at the bottom, you can click into the different primitives. This one is the sentiment analysis. So without further ado, let's bring Dylan in here. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
Total pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I'd love to start with you giving a little bit of background on yourself, Kylin Network, and sort of how you came into the space.
Yeah, so just on myself, I've been involved in crypto for a little while now. I first heard of it. I first heard of it in late 2010, but I didn't really get into it deeply until late 2011. And it's relatively early by most standards, and I think that's due to me being pretty involved in like some cypherpunk scenes, and I was a little bit of an academic slash kind of quasi-communist in university, and I was really I think like many people affected by the 2008 financial crisis. So I started really investigating sort of just how everything works in terms of financial systems, monetary systems around the world. And I was really primed for probably the message of Bitcoin. Just prior to hearing about that stuff, I'd been working on my master's in sociology, and I've been pretty into this. As part of that, I was really into like this game called EVE Online at the time, and really into ideas about in-game currencies and digital real estate that was being bought and sold. So I was really primed for that. Just progressively got involved from that point on, and got really deeply involved starting from late 2011, and then even more involved from 2013 when things went crazy. And I think you as well, Aaron. So we're around the same time in terms of being, crypto OGs. I think we're both probably considered crypto OGs.
I actually did play EVE Online, although my only takeaway from that game was the most toxic community I ever played with.
Yeah, I mean, I played it really like tangentially. I was really more interested in it, like in terms of ideas, conceptualizing it and things like that. This idea that there could be value in a digital environment or a virtual environment, and what does that mean for society and all those things. So it's very primed for that sort of thing.
For sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then when it comes to, sorry, the second part of the question about Kylin, a little bit about Kylin. Let's see, so I'll catch us up. I got involved with the Ethereum team here in Toronto pretty early on. It was part of their ICO that allowed me a lot of personal flexibility, and I did some really horrible angel investing and stuff like that, and got involved in a project that I co-founded called Harbor. We ended up doing okay, but we were part of that whole ICO craze. So we rose and fell with it, I'll say. And then I moved on to Beam, Mimblewimble. I was really impressed by the basic cryptography behind Mimblewimble as a privacy chain, and was part of the go-to-market team. They moved to Foundation. I joined up with ADX as head of growth for a bit, and then bounced around after ADX. Did some consulting and some analyst work with some VCs, and then over the previous summer started ideating around Kylin and this idea of a Polkadot native oracle.
Got it. Very cool. It's a great background. Definitely been further back than I go in the space. So the Oracle problem is one that I actually am quite familiar with, as in 2017, I was working with Dun & Bradstreet to create a decentralized marketplace for the aggregation, verification, and sale of business data. It's a problem that's been spoken about on the forum since at least when I joined the space in 2013, 14. I remember like Gavin Andreessen, Vlad Zamf, and Vitalik having a big discussion about potential for oracles, and this was probably 2015. We had no idea what was to come in the space. Can you speak a little bit about sort of what got you into the Oracle problem and how you ideated a solution for it?
Yeah, first off, I want to just be a little provocative and say, hey, if you worked on that, I know you're working for CertiK, but maybe we should talk because we're looking for people involved in those types of, or you should get involved with the community in the least. I think and Vlad is actually pretty close with a co-founder of mine, Dean, and I know that was like, I think that seemed like a more insurmountable problem, I think, in 2015 than it is now in some ways. I think we have to look to Chainlink and a lot of the work that they've done. I think that, I very much look up to everything that they've done to educate the market in terms of this being something that could drive some really interesting use cases. In particular, I think what I see is, okay, so I think that maybe in 2017, working for DNB, trying to figure that out may have been maybe 3 years ahead of its time, maybe 4, because I think that some of those things are going to get figured out in the next year or so. And what Chainlink has achieved, and what and we use, and in some ways our project is derivative of that, because we have an Oracle functionality where we have off-chain information coming on chain, but we have some other functionalities, and I think we are probably best conceptualized at the highest level as a data blockchain. But the challenges associated then were certainly more insurmountable, because you don't have the context of having a composite situation like you have now, where you have an actual use case, in my opinion, for DData, or what we call DData, or decentralized data models. And that first use case, in our opinion, is price feeding for DeFi, right? And it's great. And obviously it's great because there's a lot of different projects wanting to capitalize on this use case. We see ourselves as, yes, we were strategic about getting into Polkadot because we felt we could have a magnitude decrease in cost and throughput by being on Polkadot, having a shared relay chain and everything like that. But we started to iterate beyond this, where we thought, wouldn't it be great to have just like this underlying consensus mechanism that drives validation of data of various kinds. So for your example with Dun & Bradstreet, I really see Kylin, hopefully, as time goes on, operating as a bit of a standard bearer, where we can say powered by Kylin, right? And that whatever API that's getting called, or information that's getting called to chain, has a validation process behind it, a consensus mechanism behind it. And underneath that is a lot of staked KYL, essentially, or skin in the game, right? Where and so we can't, nobody can say this is true. I don't think anybody can ever say that. That's just impossible. You can't say this is true. But what you can, I mean, you can kind of but you can't really do it. What you can do is you can provide a probabilistic determination of the truth of that, with putting a value layer underneath that, right? Or along with it. And I think that that's what we choose to do, or that's what we basically do with Kylin Network and with oracles and with data aggregation. But I'd love to jam with you on a sidebar if you want, about your experience with DNB.
Yeah, would definitely love to speak about that. So I was actually going to ask about you choosing Polkadot, but I think you spoke pretty well to why you guys did that. So one of the things I was going to say is you guys have a wide sweeping sort of mission statement, powering the data economy. When I was working on this project, as you said, I was years early. and well, on the wrong chain, quite frankly. The reason we left that project in beta was the gas fees were way too expensive in 2018 to launch. We're trying to sell 50-cent dollar pieces of data. It just didn't work. But we also had a very narrow scope. We were only looking to work within this sort of DNB partner ecosystem and only on business data. Can you speak to sort of this wide sweeping powering the data economy and how that mission statement's not only reflected in your work, but is actually carried with you each day?
Yeah, so the data economy, a decentralized data economy, does not exist right now. Like at least in the so we're powering something that doesn't yet exist, quite frankly. But what we're doing, I think, is we are providing the context we feel to have this sandbox environment. So, harkening back to your experiences, probably, with Ethereum and Plot and all that stuff, I know that for myself, when I started to ideate and conceptualize smart contracts and things like that, I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. Okay, so if I can like represent, X is this and Y is this, and then this, and we can automate these processes and it can happen in real. And then it's like, oh crap, we need this like real world information, and we've got a sequential chain, and we have to push it. It's never going to work. So we felt like the context, yes, was Polkadot, just to come to back up a bit, but this idea of powering a data economy, it's like we want to figure out and provide a sandbox environment where people can really talented Oracle programmers. We're Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator right now, and a lot of people are really excited by this idea. And there are other solutions that we don't feel like we're going to be the first or the last that'll work within this idea of data or data economy. But we really want to get great minds imagining interesting use case parameters, like what Oracle scripting parameters could you call? What APIs could you call? What information could you call to automate really interesting smart contract operations where we're operationalizing and monetizing what used to be very idle data sets, right? So we have this slogan, which makes a lot of sense for people in crypto, because that's like where we're ensconced in currently. We hope to expand to enterprise level, but and the slogan is doing for data what DeFi did for crypto. And the analogy there is that like BTC, you and I both know had like BTC and ETH in our pockets, our virtual pockets, for a while, and it was just doing nothing. And then this composite sort of environment or circumstance got created with DeFi, and with wallets we could trust, and all of these traditional financial instruments got sort of revivified in a blockchain powered way. And we can do yield, we can do collateralization, all this interesting stuff. And this stuff that was idle that we had now is just flourishing, right? And we can do things with it. It's really neat. And we want to see the same thing happening for data. And we feel there's a lot of data that either people possess, and there are some really interesting ideas like tokenizing your genome and selling to researchers. I always talk about this because I think it's really hits at the individual level. And it's already a business use case, operational. 23andMe it has a business line that is selling your genomic data on the back end to researchers. So, I mean, there's already a market there. You can do that in like a decentralized, disintermediated way through a decentralized data marketplace, right? And I mean, the total addressable market of data, I don't know what it is. Nobody seems to know. It's probably as big as the total addressable market of money. It's very big and very abstract. So we just want to create, it's a big problem, but we don't want to do all the work ourselves. We'll kickstart a lot of the thinking and conceptualization of it, bring people the tools to build interesting Oracle scripting parameters, and hopefully, and just let it flourish. That's the basic idea.
That's great. We actually have 2 questions from the chat right now. So let's bring these on up here. First is
I'm gonna check. I'm gonna check the comments. Sorry, I have it on our private chat. I couldn't see. My apologies.
No worries. I just put it up on stream for everyone to see. What industries will benefit most from this use case? I think that's a hard one.
I think AI is actually anybody. So
Training data.
AI training data is like that's going to be probably, in my view, the biggest source of like who's gonna need the data, right? Like, so data as the new oil. It's like I used to think it was a kind of a crappy analogy, but it's grown on me because oil needs to be refined to be useful, right? And in the same way that oil needs to be refined, data needs to be refined. All of these like interesting, all of the industry of the next 20 years, I believe, will turn upon ideas about AI enablement. And in order to enable AI, we need to be able to unlock, operationalize, and monetize data among a huge variety of sources. And so I think that that's going to be one really interesting. It's almost not an industry in of itself; it's an enablement of many industries through AI. But in terms of like, I think there are really clear use cases when it comes to like automatic settlement of insurance claims might be really interesting. So like flight, we talk about this example of flight insurance. Wouldn't it be neat to have a DAO you pay a monthly subscription stablecoin to? You see that the plane is late, it's like back-ended automatic settlement to your crypto wallet because it knows that, right, this smart contract is it's all that's really neat, I think.
I saw someone working on that recently. The name's escaping me.
There is Etherisk, I believe, is
they're
working
doing farm agriculture insurance as well, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
So totally cool. Healthcare, I think, is a big one too, right? Where we can start to think about people maybe monetizing their monetizing genomic information, and then you can do like pharmaceutical companies can do customized therapeutics on that basis, right? Because they want that information to sell to people. So yeah, these are all interesting industries that could be that could use a D-data environment.
I think that's a great answer. And what you're talking about here reminds me a lot of some of the white papers I read in 2016 and 17 that really opened my eyes to the potential of the space. I remember one specifically was called MedRec out of the MIT blockchain lab. They were talking about K-anonymizing and then selling health data for researchers. It was a great idea, and I still haven't seen it put into practice yet. But in the same way they were doing that, we're talking about data here. We'd see in Golem network with computing power and storage with storage space. There's sort of all of these silos of different potential assets that aren't yet to be monetized. And I think what you're talking about here makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
I mean it's tough. Like it's a big cookie, or it's a big nut to crack, I guess, because I don't think that we would pretend that a lot of this stuff has been conceptualized, but we do feel that the ground is really fertile right now, at least on a technical level, to start thinking about how it could be solved, right? I really, we're extremely bullish on Polkadot substrate as that ground to build on to tackle these problems. I think we also, like, to your examples, I think many years ago we sort of like were like compartmentalized when we thought about how it was going to work. I think that there's definitely possibility for people to kind of like set up interesting Oracle scripting parameters, just almost like outside of like, you could just kind of randomly or imagine certain API calls and see if that's useful to people. It's sort of like you can really kind of like iterate, I hope, on Kylin Network and figure out what might be useful to people. Other companies are approaching this in different ways, like Ocean Protocol, I think is a really another project we really look up to. They're securitizing these data markets, like each one is a data token. I think that's really interesting. Another angle of attack on trying to set that marketplace operation up. We're kind of approaching it from like the standpoint of getting programmers and devs interested to create a variety of Oracle scripts to figure it out.
That makes a lot of sense. Some really interesting points you bring up here. Question from the chat here is, the ever pervasive, what about user privacy?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't expect that I don't expect that user privacy is going to be a massive issue. I mean, we'll have all the encryption, all the techniques of whatever the most cutting edge techniques of encryption possible. The other thing is that, like, I think people imagine a lot of the operations of these API calls to be like they're not really. They may conceptualize this on an individual basis, so they're thinking to themselves like, oh, like, is somebody going to have my medical records? Well, I mean, yes, like, you could conceptualize a project where you upload medical records in some secure, anonymized, like, or encrypted environment, but we're more like, there are a ton of use cases that have nothing to do with your personal information, right?
For sure.
And if you right, so I think that I'm going to be diplomatic in the answer to that question and say, I mean, the best possible techniques are going to be employed by whatever the application involved is, right? When it comes to data warehousing, that's going to be more of a P2P disintermediated kind of process. We're not going to necessarily take custody of that data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think sort of individual custody data, even going back to projects like Civic, we've seen that the standard in security for a while in that space.
Yeah.
So with such a wide sweeping addressable market, like we talked about, all of these different industries within the data industry, how have you sort of approached tackling this? Are you going one sort of use case at a time, or is your team totally disintermediated, tackling different sides of it? What's the approach there?
Well, we are a scrappy crypto startup, so we have to be extremely strategic about how we approach this, right? We can't just say, hey, we've got a big vision, and a couple of years from now, maybe it's going to work out, maybe it's not. For us, it was very important for us to have some low-hanging fruit to execute on very quickly, and to make as big of a splash and as big of a impact as possible, as quickly as possible. For us, that was iterating on what I guess ultimately is a narrow use case of DData, which is the price feeding for oracles, or price feeding Oracle services. And we felt like we had a way to power that in a very cost-effective way through Polkadot. So the first 50 partnerships that we had, public and non-public, were relatively smooth to get, because we took this approach of like, hey, we don't want to be your only Oracle. In fact, we think it's important that you have a handful of Oracles to rely upon. I think that was refreshing for a lot of our partners to hear. And then number two, we're willing to power a basic price feeding package that you can employ to power your DeFi application, and we're happy to do that as one of our first partners. So that was very important for us to hook into that narrative and that use case extremely quickly, so that we could have some sort of use case or adoption as time went on, to power these other things that we think in the long term are more strategic.
Awesome, thanks for that answer.
Yep.
Now let's go to some stuff based around the community, getting involved. Are there any sort of community initiatives, anything like that you would tell the audience today? Here's how you can get involved with us, what they can be doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this thing we started called the Fire Tweets and Fire Telegram, I guess, comment program. So we do it relatively, we assess, like, we do a few of these a week. If we think you have a sweet tweet about us, it's educational, whatever, we'll highlight it, retweet it, and give you some KYL. We're going to have the PLO, community PLO program coming out, which are parachain lease offering. There's going to be some great rewards, in my opinion, associated with lending us DOT for a parachain. I think that's going to be a really cool way to take part. We have also actually internally upgraded people from the community into the core team, believe it or not. So our initial chief community manager has become our ecosystem development lead. One of our technical ambassadors has now become our data lead engineer. He used to work as lead data engineer for PlayStation. We just announced that today. So
Yeah,
there's
saw you have,
yeah.
I saw you had an announcement of a new team member today.
Yeah. And we upgraded one of our ambassadors to chief community manager. So there's, there's ample opportunity to get involved in our community. We actually also listen to our community quite closely and implement a lot of their ideas. I truly believe we act in symbiosis with our community, and we'd be disingenuous because we're terminating in a DAO 4 years after stable mainnet. We'd be disingenuous if we did not get them, involved or take, their intel seriously.
Yep, I think that's a very nice approach to see. Before we wrap it up here, I do have one more question from Telegram. How do we stake?
Okay, so right now we have this sort of like pre-mainnet staking, or what I call bridge staking, because we have this time period before we get to mainnet on Polkadot and get our parachain on Polkadot. Hopefully, I think we stand a good chance. And that's on MontraDAO, and you can find out information by getting involved in some of our socials to figure out exactly how you do that. But it's pretty easy. When the time comes, we will have a staking mechanism. It's based on Polkadot and POS staking, so we have an optimal. It should optimize around 12% APY. And then, if you are technically oriented, you can get involved as an Oracle programmer. If you write a really awesome Oracle script, I mean, I see that as is one of the best opportunities in our network is writing Oracle script, because you don't need KYL, you don't need anything, you just need technical acumen. And potentially, if you write a very popular Oracle script, you're going to get 15% forever for whoever uses that Oracle script. So it's like, I really hope there's like a gold rush on writing Oracle scripts, So I think that's a really neat way to get involved if you're technically oriented. We'll have our 100 validators program as well. We'll have the vetting and process associated with that. But these are all ways that you can definitely get involved. And then we have a bit of an ambassador program too.
So one more very important question for you guys. This is the CertiK Security Leaderboard Showcase. Can you talk about your experience working with CertiK, getting your audit, your Skynet, your Shield, and sort of your decision and experience with us?
Well, it's been overwhelmingly positive. In fact, like quite amazing. We like to hear. I wasn't paid to say that. it's actually my point of view on it. Like if you're a project that needs, for us, it was like, okay, we knew CertiK was the best to ask. And then when we asked, you guys to help us out, and in particular, I'll single out Marco. It's just really, really awesome working with him, in particular, working with the whole team, but certainly Marco. Like we had a few interesting challenges prior to launch. We needed a few contracts. We wanted to be extremely careful about what the ultimate life contract was. We had some quick turnaround times and stuff like that. So really from a service and basic competency level or aspect, just flying colors. For us, it's like an important component of trust with our community, right? Because we don't know, like if you're just interested in the project, you need to have some sort of level of validation above and beyond whatever we say we are, right? And having that obviously gives a lot of, it's truly valuable to projects, right? In so many ways, but it's also extremely valuable to the community of those projects as well.
Awesome. Obviously that's what we love to hear and the type of experience we like to deliver. We're always striving for that. Now I think we should start to wrap it up. Do you want to sort of tell people where they can find your socials, your website, what they should be looking for?
Yeah, I feel like I'm like in the late 90s. I'm gonna be like, go to www. But
If you actually
no,
type it in the live chat, I can show it on stream if that's
yeah,
easier.
totally. Okay, so check out Kylin.network. Check out our Telegram. I guess, I don't know, you can put it in our Telegram channel and our Twitter, and those are really the main avenues. We've got a Medium, but we always just do our announcements through Twitter and through a TG. But we're starting to do, I think bi-weekly, every Friday, we're gonna do like a quasi clubhouse in our Telegram. So you can actually come on and we do this voice chat. You can ask me some questions or ask other team members some questions. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Really great chat. Really enjoy speaking about D-Data.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're using that word.
I got to pick up the slang of the day.
Yeah, totally.
Everyone, please do remember to like and subscribe, and catch us again here next week with another guest.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, though. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.